Hello again. So our next activity is going to be the bison art. This is what it looks like in your kit. This is probably going to be the one that takes the longest to do, but maybe it's also the most fun. So let's open it up. We'll start by taking the paper clip off of the bottom and just setting it aside. And then we can gently remove our pieces. And if you flatten out that folder paper, you will notice that these are your directions. Okay? So, we have included in the kit, we have some white construction paper, and then this other white paper, which you can see is a little bit shorter than the first one, and it's a little bit heavier and smoother. This is your cardstock. This will be the base of your activity. And then you have some sheets of blue and green and yellow construction paper. You have a little piece of yellow paper to make a sun, and then you also have a bison template. So this came off of barley and birch, this template did, and they allow us as a nonprofit museum to share this with you, so I think that's really nice. You might want to go visit their page and see what else they have. So, my additional supplies that are not included in your kit include scissors and glue, and you can use either just regular white glue or craft glue, or you can use this glue stick, a pencil or marker or pen, and just a little bit of water. And oh, you know what else comes in that craft kit is the coffee and the paintbrush. Hold on just a minute. There we go, a little bit of coffee and paintbrush. That's why we need just a little bit of water. Not a whole lot, not as much as we needed for the boat activity. So go ahead and pull those things out. The first thing I'm going to do is, now, I'll give you a choice. You can either just work directly on this piece of paper with a bison, but it will work a little bit better if you go ahead and cut this out and then trace it onto the white construction paper. This white construction paper is a little bit heavier and it will take the coffee paint just a little bit better. So that's what we're going to do first. And I'll try to move quickly, and you might want to take a little bit better time with this than I'm going to do today. So you don't really see bison or buffalo in Arkansas anymore unless somebody just happens to have brought a herd in to raise. But they were once very prevalent in this area. And the Indians, of course, the Native Americans that were here used them, and they would use them wisely. And if they took an animal, they used all the parts of it. They would eat the meat. They would use any of the bones or the antlers for making tools or jewelry. They would use the fur for clothing or blankets. They could use the skin for all kinds of things. So this bison comes in two parts. It has a front part and a back part. And the reason for that is that bison are really furry up at the front. And so we're going to actually paint the top half, the front half of our bison more heavily than we do the back half. I want to not just put my bison straight in the middle, because I might want to use some more of this white paper to make clouds. And so I want to make sure I leave enough of my white paper for that. And also I need a little bit to make the horns for the bison. So really these are pretty simple lines. You shouldn't have too much difficulty cutting them out. If you want, you could just freehand your own bison and make your own. You don't have to use this template. This is just a suggestion. You could just freehand your own bison and skip the whole part of cutting out and using a template. I'm not really that artistic, so I think I'm going to stick with the template today. All right, we are almost done cutting out our template. I'll just put those scraps aside, and I'll take my pencil and I will quickly make this design onto the heavier white construction paper. Okay, we'll set that front part aside. Now, here is the back part. And I think probably when we get finished, you might notice that everybody's bison is just a little bit different. But you know, isn't that how bisons really are in the world anyway? No two are quite the same. Okay, so I don't know if you can see it because it's not very dark, but there's my bison going onto the heavier white paper. I'm also working on a mat because we're going to be doing a little bit of painting. And it's not with real paint, unless, of course, you want to use some of the real paint you might have at home. You might want to add in some extra details. So I'm going to use just a little bit of water, and then I'll take my paintbrush and stir that around. You want to make it kind of soupy. It's not, you want it thin enough that you can paint with it to add the brown color, but you don't want it so thin that it looks like coffee that your parents drink in the morning. You want it to have a little more texture than just regular watered down paint. Okay, so, don't know if you can see, but that's just a little bit of soupy coffee. Okay, now I'm going to, first, I think I'll move my other papers out of the way so that I don't get coffee paint on those. And I'm going to put this little extra piece of paper in here. Okay, now I'm going to use my coffee ground paint to add a thin layer of brown to the back of my bison. Okay. And then I'll add another layer. I'm probably not going to make it too thick because I want it to be able to dry and I don't want it to get too wet. But now I'll do the front. Paint the front of the bison. It really does make it look like it has some fur on there. That's pretty cool. Nice texture to it. Give it some depth and some character. Okay. Now, we're going to set that aside and let that dry for just a little bit. Now, let's go ahead and take the base of your artwork, take your cardstock, and let's put that on our work surface. I don't have a very big space. I wonder if you have a big space where you're working. So, the next thing you're going to do is create your landscape. And of course the blue is going to be the sky, and so I'm just going to take my glue, use my glue stick, and stick that sky right up at the top. Okay, kind of line up the edges, make it nice and neat. Okay, well, it's almost nice and neat. A little crooked, but we can fix that. Here we go. Okay, nice blue skyline. Okay, now, I'm sorry, but I did notice on your directions there's a little bit of a mistake. I think I said take your yellow paper, and really what you want to do next is you want to take your green paper. If you want, before you do the green paper, this is where your extra white paper might come in handy. I'm going to take the other half of this white paper, cut some off on letting my bison dry, and what I can do is I can gently tear some clouds. You want to get rid of those smooth, straight edges to have a more organic, natural look to it, like that. And so then I can place, maybe I'll do one more, maybe a smaller one to go somewhere below it maybe. Okay, maybe I'll flip that one over. Okay, and now I'm going to glue carefully, quickly, my clouds into the sky. Now if you wanted to, you could wait until the end to do this and place those last. But you can already see the levels of texture and adding some depth to this picture. Okay, so I'll save that paper for some horns later on. And next we're going, and this is where, again, your directions are a little mistaken. Take your green paper. This is going to be the middle part of our landscape. And again, tear off the straight edge so that you have a more natural, more organic edge on there. And then I'm going to line that up and glue it underneath the blue. And again, that's going to be the middle part of our landscape. And I'm moving pretty quickly on this, but you can take your time. Okay, so while I have that done, I'm going to check out my bison, see how he's drying. And I think, even though he's still pretty wet, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more, another layer of brown to the front of the bison, so he starts to look a little bit darker. Oh yeah, there we go. We can see a difference now in the color between the front and the back of the bison. Okay, next we're going to take the yellow, and this is going to be our foreground. So again, I'm going to tear an edge so that I don't have just a smooth, unnatural edge for my grass. If you wanted, you could get really creative here. And this is where you would be closer up in the foreground, and so you would see maybe more blades of grass. And actually, I'm not sure I want quite that much grass, so I'm going to tear a little bit more off. You can decide how deep you want your grass to be. But I'm guessing he's kind of on a prairie, and so it is pretty flat, so I'm not going to make it look too hilly or rolling. If you want to, you can take a marker or some paint and you can draw in some individual blades of grass. I don't really have the time to do that right now, but I might even tear just like some strips to make it look a little bit loose, like maybe it would wave in the wind. So I think I'll do that. I could use my scissors for that as well. And then I'd probably have to go back and maybe curl them a little bit so that they don't look too fresh and too straight. So now that I'm doing that, I really prefer the torn edge. I think I'll just continue to tear. And you don't have to tear the same amount. Maybe one's a little bit long, one's a little bit short, just to give it some variation as you go. I bet that you're really creative and you can come up with some different ways to make your grass look very attractive and realistic. Okay, so I'm going to use the glue stick to once again add some color to our background. Okay, and I'm going to line this up at the bottom edge. All right, so I think I might take, this little yellow sheet is for a sun. If you want to do a sun, maybe you can just freehand a circle. If not, maybe use the coffee lid. Oh, we could do that. Let's see, how big is that? That's going to be a little too big for mine, maybe not for yours. I'm just going to kind of eyeball a little circle and hope that it turns out well. Good enough for my son. And maybe you want to use your markers, add some some orange or some white or some red or something that makes it look not just monochromatic, but to have some real color to it. And actually, when you get done with your project, I would like to see them. So if you could take pictures and you could send them to us online, or you could load them onto our Facebook page, we would love to see your pictures when you're done with yours. Okay, so this is my landscape. I have the sun and the clouds on the blue sky background with my green middle ground and my yellow grassy foreground. So the thing I have to do next, now for you, I would say wait until your bison dries, but we don't really have time for our example today, so I'm just going to cut out this wet bison as best I can. I'm going to kind of shake it off a little bit to get the excess coffee grounds out of there, and then I'm just going to gently cut my wet bison out. Okay. And again, yours is going to look much better because I'm sure you're going to take the time to do yours right and let it dry. And then it will be really fantastic. What do you imagine it would have been like to see bison roaming the land? To maybe be going by on a boat or in a wagon and see the bison go by? So I'm just going to hope that my glue sticks on my wet bison. I don't recommend that. Okay, now you can turn your bison either direction you want to. You can face left, you can face right, you can face east or west, or maybe yours is a sheep. Anyway, you do yours the way you would like to see yours done. Okay. Ooh, the front half of my bison is really wet because I added that second coat to give it more depth and darker color. Okay. Now, some of your coffee grounds may come off as it dries, so just be careful with it. You might want to tap it, make sure that it doesn't come off and bleed onto your other colors if that's important to you. Or if it does, maybe you just say, hey, look, I had some soil out there. Look at that. Okay, so here's my faux bison with all of this coffee ground fur on him. Okay. And we'll put him right there. Guess I should turn him the right way and have his leg on the ground, not up in the air, huh? Okay. Now remember, my glue is not sticking very well because my bison is still wet. And you're going to wait until your bison dries, which is a much better idea. Okay? So since my bison's wet, I'm going to put that glue on my actual construction paper and see if that will work a little bit better. All right, now my bison still needs an antler, and I've got a little bit of paper right here, so I'm going to look at the picture on my instructions and just try to mimic what they have for a horn. So, almost looks kind of like a big check mark almost. We're almost done with this project. Can you believe it? I think maybe that's a little bit more right there maybe. We want to add more of a point. And my bison is backwards from the instructions, but that's okay. Okay, now my fingers are sticky. Are your fingers sticky? I'm going to try to gently hold up my bison and hope he doesn't fall over and off the page. Okay, so there you have it. a bison landscape. I know that yours is going to be great, and I hope that you will send us a picture, and I hope that you enjoyed this activity.